Competitor number 105. On October 14th, 1996, Derek Smith got into an argument with his wife. Now, this wasn't new to the Smiths. They fought all the time. And quite often, those fights ended in violence. In fact, Derek Smith had 4 misdemeanor domestic violence charges and convictions in just the past 3 years. But this night and this fight was different. Because on this night, Derek decided to pull out a gun, point at his wife, and pull the trigger. But before that bullet entered his wife's chest, it first passed through the body of their 6-week-old baby daughter. The baby daughter that his frightened wife had been holding and protecting in her arms throughout that entire argument. Now, I wish I could say that incidents like this are rare, but I can't because it's just not true. The reality is that incidents like these happen every single year, every single month, every single week, and every single day. In fact, they happen 3 times a day. Every 8 hours, a woman in America will be murdered by her husband, fiance, or boyfriend. According to the FBI, between 2001 and 2012, more women were killed by their husbands and boyfriends than all the American casualties from September 11th, the U.S. war in Afghanistan, and the U.S. war in Iraq combined. That's nearly 12,000 murders. And that's just domestic violence murders, and that's just women. What about men? 1 man will be killed every 2 days from domestic violence. And sadly, 1 child under the age of 13 will be killed every 6 days and will be killed by their own parents, step-parents, or guardians. The average age of those children? 7. That's 3 Sandy Hook massacres every single year. But if you really want to see how bad domestic violence is in America, look at the #1 cause of death among pregnant women. According to the CDC, between 2003 and 2007, the #1 cause of death among pregnant women is not complications from pregnancy, it's not car accidents, it's murder. And as shocking as those statistics are, they're not nearly as shocking as what you can do to your own family member and not be convicted of a felony. Take the example of Ferdinand Smith. Ferdinand Smith attacked his wife with a knife, and all he got for it was 10 years of pretrial probation for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And after those 10 years of probation were over, he had a completely spotless record. And when his wife finally decided to leave him after that probation was finished, he nearly strangled her to death for it. When she called the police, they didn't show up. And when they finally decided to arrest him 20 days later, it was too late. He'd already tracked her down and shot her multiple times in the face and chest. And the gun that he shot her with was his work gun. His work gun from where he worked as an armed security guard at a children's elementary school. And while that story can teach us many lessons, one important one, especially in a time where 90 to 95% of all of our cases are plea bargained down, is that effective responses to domestic violence cannot be predicated simply on the fact that someone has to be convicted of a felony. The simple fact of the matter, a fact that has been exhaustively researched by the Department of Justice, is that any incident of domestic violence makes it more likely that violence will happen again, and that as that violence will continue to escalate as it continues to happen. Well, I hate to call this good news, the Department of Justice also tells us that domestic violence murders are almost always predicated by at least 1 non-fatal domestic violence assault. Which means that if we can catch domestic violence early, we can prevent it from happening again. We can prevent the escalation and prevent the murder. How do guns fit into this equation? Of those 12,000 murdered women I mentioned, 2/3 of them were murdered by guns. That means by this time today, 2 women will have already been murdered by an intimate partner with a gun. So if we're serious about domestic violence and we really want results, we have to look at guns. Even if we don't want to, we have to. So does taking away the right to possess a gun actually work? You hear a lot of arguments that taking away a gun will just cause someone to grab a different weapon. That all we're doing is converting gun violence and gun murders into fist and club and knife murders. But the empirical evidence says otherwise. According to multiple studies using the FBI's data, when you take guns away from people that are convicted of domestic violence misdemeanors, you get an 8% drop in domestic violence murders. Not a drop in just gun murders, all murders. So without these laws, those 12,000 women that were murdered would have been 13,000. And what about non-fatal domestic violence? Do those laws have any effect on them? The Bureau of Justice Statistics says yes. Since the passing of the Lautenberg Amendment, there has been a 68% drop in non-fatal domestic violence assaults. So what are we arguing about? It can't seriously be the fact that a misdemeanor is not serious enough to take away someone's gun rights. Because we take guns away from people all the time for less. You can lose your gun if you simply have a restraining order against you. No felony conviction, no misdemeanor conviction, no conviction at all. You can lose your gun even if you've just been indicted on a felony. And it doesn't even have to be a violent felony. Right now, we are taking away guns from white-collar embezzlers while we are leaving them in the hands of actual convicts like Derek Smith. Removing guns after a genuine conviction of a misdemeanor domestic violence offense is not a shocking expanse of state power. It's a targeted, limited application of principles we all already agree on. In fact, it's something that should have been passed hand in hand with the restraining order provision back in 1968 and not 1996. Now, the Supreme Court has told us that the right to own a gun is a qualified right. It's a right based on self-defense. But self-defense assumes something. It assumes that you're using the gun for defense, that you are using it to defend yourself and your family, not attacking them. You can't be entitled to a right to self-defense if you are the person that everyone is defending themselves against. At the end of the day, if protecting yourself and your family is the key reason why this country allows us to have guns, then protecting your family from you has got to be a valid reason to take them away. But if it isn't, then those statistics are never going to change. And all those stories about strangers are eventually going to become a story about someone you know, about one of your friends, your sisters, your daughters, and your granddaughters. Maybe a granddaughter who goes to an elementary school guarded by someone like Ferdinand Smith. And if we leave guns in the hands of people like him, people who are mentally unstable, criminally violent, willing to hurt their own family members, who have rage problems, control problems, and power issues, then it's not just Ferdinand Smith who has blood in his hands. It's all of us. Thank you.